What's the number one complaint hiring managers have when reading students and first-time job seekers' resumes? Poor written communication skills on the application materials themselves. That's right. How you write your resume can make or break your chances of landing the interview. I know writing a resume as a high school student can seem pretty tough. After all, you're being asked to create a professional document when you might not have even had your first job yet. But that's why I'm here to help. I'm Anna, a professional career writer here at Resume.io, and I'm in the office because today I'm going to walk you through each step of creating a great high school resume. 0 years of experience required. Let's get started. Before we can get to the writing, we need a page to write on. And not just any page. A great layout can speak volumes about your motivation and attention to detail, even if you're just starting out. For a student, I'm going to look for a design that's fairly simple. You should also take into account the college or the company's tone. In this case, I'll go with Paris, since it could work well in pretty much any situation. So now that we have this blank sheet of possibilities in front of us, let's start with the easy stuff. The header space contains your job title, your name, email, and number. Stuff that we all know by heart, but you'd be surprised how many people make a typo here that costs them the job. And while we're on the subject of disqualifying errors, make sure your email is professional. Just because middle school was only a few years ago doesn't mean you can still use that first email address on your resume. You know the one I'm talking about. Now that the header looks great, let's talk about the summary, which is sometimes called a profile or personal statement. If you're applying for a job, this section is basically a really short story about what you're like as a professional. Let's assume this is more of a general resume to recap everything you've accomplished in high school. Just remember to use descriptive language. Strong adjectives and action verbs go a long way. This phrase I'm going to add here uses a great example with strong language to back it up. Managing tells me more than using a generic word like doing. On to education. If you've had a lot of work experience, we might put your education at the bottom. But since you're still a student, I'm going to drag this section up. The education section should be pretty straightforward. You'll need the name of your school, the dates. You can also include the expected graduation date since you're still studying. If you're really proud of your grades, you can add them here. If not, it's best to leave them off. If you still need some help getting started, you can find the resume example I'm building today at the link below. All my sample sentences are in there, so you can modify them for your own experience. Speaking of which, now we're at the employment history section. If you had professional employment, great, you can add it here. But what if you haven't had your first job yet? The truth is, as a student, even odd jobs for family or neighbors can help show that you're hardworking and trustworthy. Add a job title, who you've worked for, when, where you did the job. Once you fill in these main details, you can move on to the bullet points. The key here is to highlight your strengths and accomplishments without ever lying. A good way to do this is to look for opportunities to add action verbs and numbers in these bullet points. So, for example, instead of saying kept shop floor tidy, you could show the impact you had by writing something like maintained a clean shop environment and neat product displays. Don't sell yourself short. Make each sentence work for you. Rather than simply making a claim, back it up with numbers if you can. Show off that 0 absence work record. See how that's just a bit more specific and convincing? If you're drawing a blank when it comes to completing your employment section, no problem. Here's what we're going to do. Add a custom section to your resume and rename it. There, now you've got a dedicated area for just about anything else that's not in your studies. Add the title of what you did, where you did it, dates, location. Just like you would with a job entry, highlight the responsibilities and achievements that are relevant to the position you're applying for. And yes, your extracurriculars in your school totally count. You could even add a prize or an award in this section too. Remember to keep them in reverse chronological order. Doesn't that look better? The last major section of any complete resume is the skills. Before you fill this out, make sure to take another closer look at the job description. Pick out any special skills that the hiring manager is looking for, and if they're true for you, add them to this section of your resume. The goal here is to have a good mix of technical abilities, called hard skills, along with some of your personality traits. Those are your soft skills. As a student though, if you need to rely on these soft skills a little bit more, that's definitely okay. Just like I'm doing here. I think we're done. Not so bad, right? And that's it. You've just created a resume with all the key information that shows why you're the right fit for the job. But before you go, let me give you my top 5 tips to keep your resume extra sharp. Number 1, get to the point. Unless you've got decades of experience under your belt, it's best to keep your resume to just 1 page, at least when applying in the US or Canada. If you're overflowing with things to say, just adapt your resume for the specific situation by taking off certain bullet points when they're not relevant, for example. Number 2, spell check. I cannot stress this enough. Whether it's built into the resume builder or you have your grammar snob friend proofread it right before the deadline, please make sure there are no typos or other mistakes before you submit. And number 3, formatting counts. Make sure to balance the amount of white space and text so that the page is easy to read. And remember, a great looking resume will capture the hiring manager's attention and tell them you're serious about the position. Look for a template with a header that matches the tone of the company. And number 4, get specific. The job description is your personal cheat sheet. Look for duties and skills that are important to the employer and put them on your resume while being completely honest about your experience. And number 5, save it right. If you're emailing or printing, a PDF is the way to go because the formatting won't change between computers. But if you need to upload your resume to an online application, make sure to check if the employer prefers a Word doc. And that's all there is to it. You've got everything you need to write that job-winning resume. Make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for even more videos on making your application the best it can be. Now it's time to go out there and get that job.